So I thought I would focus more on some work that I did when I was at Drexel and how this work could be applied to some stuff that we're doing here currently at Christianity. So I'm going to give if you want to take a crash course on misclassification, like your intermediate epidemiology course, I'm going to try and go over that pretty quickly, and then really get into the meat of the talk, which is the work that I did at Drexel, followed by how we can apply that here at Christianity. All right, so what is misclassification? It's essentially some kind of measurement error. So there's the truth that you're trying to obtain when you're doing your study, and there's what the participants actually report. My interest is not so much, and the focus of this talk is not so much on proper survey design, which is how a lot of this can occur in the first place, but I like to work with secondary data that's already been collected. So it's already captured in some fashion that doesn't represent the truth, and I want to know how can we accommodate for the fact that we are mismeasuring something. There's a whole bunch of types of misclassification, but for what we're going to talk about today, I want to focus on exposure misclassification. In traditional epidemiology, you have some exposure that you try to correlate to some outcome. So if we mismeasure the exposure, like on the previous slide, asking someone about if they smoke or not, that's an example of exposure misclassification. On the other hand, you can also have outcome misclassification. And some work that I did with the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, we looked at the number of cases of pertussis that were happening in the city. And pertussis is, first of all, it can be a difficult disease to diagnose in childhood because it resembles other respiratory conditions, but also it's underreported to the city. So we came up with some methods to deal with this outcome misclassification. There's also this notion of differential and non-differential misclassification. All that essentially means is that if I'm misclassifying something on the basis of the exposure, and it's also related to the outcome, then it's differential. If it's just on the basis of the exposure alone, it is non-differential. That'll become a little bit more concrete as I work my way through the example in here. This graph right here can help kind of figure out all the different types of, or how misclassification can arise and how we can use sensitivity and specificity to measure misclassification. So in the I don't know what color this is, what, pink? That's the truth. So there's some, let's go back to the smoking example again. Their actual smoking history is the truth. That's what we want to get at. What they report to us, if they're self-reporting it, they're coming for prenatal care, asking them, are they a smoker? What they tell us is the observed, and that's what's in purple. The overlap between these two, the observed and the truth, is true positive. So this is someone they actually do smoke, and they told us in the survey that they're a smoker. Then you have the false negatives. So this is a lot more of what you would expect with sensitive health information. So something that could be potentially stigmatizing, a behavior, a condition. You would expect there to be people that just prevaricate to obscure the truth, so you're going to have false negatives. And that's a function of sensitivity. On the other hand, you can have false positives, which are that doesn't so much happen with sensitive health information because it's not like you will disclose doing something that you did not actually do. So I want to take a brief exercise here. Let me just get a show of hands right now. Who in here smokes weed? Current or past? Come on, give me like one hand maybe? All right. Well, how many people are in here? All right, there's 26 people in here. So we had 0, yes. When I've done this before, I at least got a few people to raise their hand, but maybe because it's a big room, that's why we don't want to label it. So, Yukiko, could you pass these out? And now, if you would, to indulge me right here, whether or not you smoke, or you make it in the past. It doesn't have to be right here. Can you pass out these?
Where's the
And
purple
then
pen?
tally them up as DE-CTR.
They're so big they don't know.
Give me a tally them?
You keep it original.
Breaking Bad. Walter White.
Yes, if you've ever.
Walter White from Breaking Bad. Yes. Put your name on it.
No. Well, I guess you could have. It's actually.
Yes.
Much like specification
We don't want to know.
It wasn't like, they don't wanna know. It wasn't well working.
It's ever. It would ever work.
I think she's almost done.
They disguise themselves in other language. Never know who it was.
All right, the tally is in.
Well, we.
Okay, we have 11 people that have tried it. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's in the past. And then 15 individuals that said no. So I'm going to make an assumption here, and I'm going to say that there's no one that's trying to like state this on purpose and give me a false one. Well, that didn't happen anyway because nobody raised their hand. So what we see is that I don't even need to calculate this. That we have. Well, actually, you know what I do? Can someone calculate for me the sensitivity of this? So if you have a calculator, that's just A over A plus C. Actually, wait, that's
Zero.
yeah. Well, this didn't exactly work out.
we leave it so well.
Well, let me skip past this, because this didn't exactly go according to plan. But what we should see, sensitivity is 0, right? Specificity is 100%, sensitivity was 0. No, this works, yeah. So in general, what you see when you are surveying on these this health-sensitive information is you'd expect to see excellent specificity, and that there's no reason to believe there'll be false positives. But there is in fact, in our case, the sensitivity is 0, so you have an inferior sensitivity, meaning there's a lot of false negatives out there. So how can we actually use this information? So now I'm going to get into the example of some work that I did at Drexel, where we were interested in accurately measuring someone's sexual behavior and how that would relate to risk for incident HIV infection. And in our case, we were looking specifically at men who have sex with men, and we were surveying by just asking someone their sexual identity. If you identify as gay or homosexual, we were going to put you into the this MSM, the heterosexual men category. And if you don't self-identify, then we're going to say that you're non-MSM. In reality, the true relationship, what you would expect to see up here, is that risk for HIV among MSM would be much greater than risk for HIV among non-MSM. And I'm only talking about sexual transmission here. I'm not talking about drug use. And therefore, you would see this positive relative risk. In actuality, though, what you see as a result of the imperfect sensitivity, or a lot of false negatives, is that some of the men that are HIV positive, essentially, are moved to the bucket now where they are labeled in our analysis as non-MSM. That is misclassification, and that is biasing our analysis here because we are underestimating the true risk. So there's a few different things we can do about this. We can do nothing, and you probably see this quite often in the literature, where people will just acknowledge this as a limitation in the analysis, and then move on from there. Just put it in that second last paragraph of your manuscript, and you're done. You can get a little bit more sophisticated about it. You can do a sensitivity analysis, or we can do some sample calculations. My interest, though, is on the very last category, which is this Bayesian adjustment. So you can do nothing, and that's why there's nothing here. You can correct or work through a simple equation, and that's if you know the specificity and sensitivity of, in our case, sexual identity and what their true sexual behavior is. Then we have this sensitivity specificity measure. We can pop it into this equation over here and come up with the corrected risk estimate. And this is just based on, Paul Gustafson has done a lot of work in measurement error, has this wonderful textbook. It's super thin, but it's also super dense at the same time. And a lot of this work is based on Gustafson's work, but he presents this equation in it. So you can run through the motions there, and you can correct for it.
So Neal, can you put it back on slideshow and make it bigger?
Oh, sorry. And then, so you can also do a sensitivity analysis. And in sensitivity analysis, we're just going to vary the prevalence of MSM in our population. So, maybe we measured it at 1%. What if it was 5%? We believe that there's underreporting. What if it's 10? What if it's 20? So you go through these steps and you just vary it. But now to do a little bit better job of it, we can go down this road of what's known as Bayesian misclassification adjustment. And to introduce that, I first have to take this quick tangent to talk about Bayes' theorem. And it's actually a pretty simple, elegant equation here, and it's a conditional probability where the probability of A is conditioned on our knowledge of B. We can use this because if we have some data set, like I have this data set that has men who have sex with men surveyed by sexual identity, and I want to measure the incidence of HIV, I can arrive at some answer based on that data set. But I can do a little bit better job of that if I bring in prior knowledge. So I know something about risk among MSM and HIV, and I know something about the amount of underreporting that I would believe to occur in this population. So I can bring that into my analysis and possibly arrive at a more informed answer. The question is this a better answer? And as with everything, it depends on assumptions. It depends on how you're implementing it and how you interpret it. So just to go back to where Bayes' theorem fits into something that you're probably well familiar with, you have a screening test. It has some property, sensitivity and specificity. And you want to be able to tell a patient if they test positive, what's your probability of actually being a true positive. And conversely, if it's a negative test, what's the probability of it being true negative? So what do you guys think that's called? Positive and negative predictive values. And that can be derived from the sensitivity and specificity in this table by applying Bayes' theorem. And it makes for a wonderful mathematical exercise if you're sleepless at nights or if you're taking your comprehensive exams in epidemiology. But how this actually works is that it's dependent upon the prevalence of some condition in your population. And that's why you can have tests that are very sensitive, but are kind of crappy if the condition is super rare, the prevalence. All right, so the example from Drexel that I want to spend probably the next 15 minutes on. We had this, so our interest was to try to do a better job of quantifying risk for HIV, given that you practice, that you have high-risk sexual behavior. Essentially, that's unprotected anal intercourse. We are inferring someone's sexual behavior based on their sexual identity, because that's what's often collected in surveys. I'm not going to have a survey in just the general population and ask very nuanced sexual behavior questions. But what I will ask is some question like, what's your identity? Maybe I'll ask something about have you had male sex partners in the past year or lifetime. So I have some knowledge, but I need to be able to infer behavior from that. Well, we had this study at Drexel that was, it's a study that was done in Boston called the Black and African American Men's Health Study, where we actually had very specific, nuanced sexual behavior questions. And we also had questions about their sexual identity and about if they had male partners. Based on that information then, we were able to compute the sensitivity and specificity. And as expected, specificity was near perfect and sensitivity was not quite as good. This one was for male partner, but I probably should have put the sexual identity one up here because our sensitivity on that was like 70% or so. And the reason that may be is that, well, you could either not disclose that you are gay, but you could just, because identity is all how you identify. You could still have sex with men, but you could just view yourself as not being gay. On the other hand, you can also identify as gay, but not engage in the highest risk type of sexual behavior, which is condomless anal intercourse. You can just do, it could be entirely oral. So there's this misclassification of what you're actually doing based on what your exposure is, identity or partner. So we were able to obtain these estimates of sensitivity and specificity. Further, we were able to then measure in this, okay. Let me back up. This slide here. We were interested in knowing from a national survey, how does the fact that people are underreporting affect the estimates that you see from a data source like NESARC? So NESARC is this national survey of alcohol and drug dependence and related conditions, generalizable to the U.S. A lot of what we know in public health about risk for HIV comes from national surveys like these, where we only have the potentially misclassified measure of sexual behavior, in this case, partner gender. It could also be identity. So what we did is we used that misclassified exposure, and then we computed an odds ratio in NESARC. And we see that there's an 8-fold risk associated with HIV if you had male partners. I think this was in the past year. But again, this is not the best measure because you could have had male partners but engaged entirely in oral sex or not had sex at all and just say that this was an intimacy partner, not a sexual partner. We want to get at the behavior though. And if we take that simple approach from the equations, you could plug the numbers in here because we already had sensitivity, we already had specificity. I can tell you the prevalence of HIV status among MSM. And we arrive at this corrected odds ratio of 26.4. So that tells me that in fact the risk, we're underestimating the true risk because there's a lot, if you remember that graphic earlier where I put some of the risks in the smaller bin, we had this misclassification, so in fact it's much stronger now that we've accounted for it. The problem though with this approach is that it's just a single point estimate. I don't have any idea of the precision around it. It also assumes, that everyone has the same sensitivity and specificity. You're treating everyone the same, essentially saying you all have the same probability of underreporting. We could also do a little bit more sophisticated approach, we can go the sensitivity analysis route, which we observed in NESARC that classifying someone as MSM based on male partner status was 2%. What would this relationship look like if it was 4%, 10%, 20%, and so on? But that, I mean, this is just like pure, I mean, it's speculation, right? There's some advanced knowledge to this, like you wouldn't have completely implausible estimates here, but there's still this underlying question of like, well, how do I know what to put in here, and how do I know when to stop my sensitivity analysis? I could just keep going. So what we did at Drexel is we used this Bayes theorem to account for this misclassification, and we incorporate prior knowledge. That slide I had earlier where it's like prior knowledge means more informed answer here. Our prior knowledge came from this validation study, BAAMHS, that I mentioned, where we had the very nuanced sexual behavior history, and we also had these misclassified exposures of identity and partner gender. So based on that, we want to apply knowledge that we have from BAAMHS, which was specific just to Boston area men, and we want to apply this now to the U.S. generalizable population that we have in NESARC. How we actually do this, so this is going to get, the next few slides are as technical as I'll get here. But how we actually do this is we define a few different regression models behind the scenes. We have the outcome model, which is based on truth, and that just essentially says that the risk of having HIV, of being HIV infected, which is your Y, is a function of these predictors over here. One of those predictors happens to be if you're MSM or non-MSM. This model, though, assumes truth, that we've accurately classified MSM as MSM. We also have an exposure model, which just says what's the probability of reporting as MSM. Where we correct, though, for this misclassified variable is through this equation here, where we apply the sensitivity and specificity that we know to essentially this exposure model. So we know that someone is self-reporting as their identity, or someone's self-reporting that they've had male partners. It's conditioned on other variables that would predict this exposure. And that while we're doing that, we're going to essentially kind of multiply it by the sensitivity, we're going to multiply it by the specificity to try to then impute what someone's true MSM status is, what their true sexual behavior is based on this misclassified exposure variable. So we need a few different things to be able to do that. We need sensitivity, we need specificity, and we already saw that. We had that from this study called BAAMHS. We also need some idea of the true relationship between high-risk sexual behavior and HIV infection. We also had that from BAAMHS. So we have this source now for the priors, and we can apply this into the Bayesian analysis by essentially taking these numbers that we have and we make these distributions out of them. Then we go ahead and we sample from these distributions in the simulation. We do that tens of thousands of times, and we essentially end up with this a corrected odds ratio, and we also end up with now a confidence interval around that. So I spoke about these already. I was putting this all together. Let's get down to what we actually observed. Here's the naive estimates from NESARC. So what I see is that if you, in this national survey, if you self-identified as gay, you had a 21-fold risk of HIV infection. If you disclosed that you had male sex partners, you had, more or less a 5-fold risk of HIV. So which one would you believe based on this? The biology of the HIV infection is not any different here based on what how you're measuring sexual behavior. So what's going on? You would expect these to be the same. So this tells us that there's misclassification going on. When we apply the correction, though, based on sensitivity and specificity, now we see the estimates begin to converge, right? You see sexual identity, someone self-disclosing as gay has a 5-fold risk. based on same-sex partners, you're also seeing 5, 6-fold risk. So the estimates have moved, they've converged. Based on this, though, which would you say is the better indicator of sexual behavior? Is it having male partners or self-disclosing as gay? Partners, yep. Because that estimate did not move as much. It went from 4.5 to 5.5, whereas sex identity went from 21 to 5. All right, I have some time. So any questions about this work right here that we did at Drexel? This was limited to, so a few things that I didn't mention because I was concerned about time was this population here was restricted to Black and African American men because our prior data came from Black and African American men in Boston. But we want to have these nationally generalizable estimates. In the study I'm presenting here, we therefore restricted NESARC to Black and African American men. Since this study, though, we had another one that just, it's in press as we speak, that takes prior data based on Black and African American men and applies it into essentially the entire racial demographic of the U.S. We're able to do that because we have some knowledge about stigma within the Black community of underreporting your sexual identity. So based on that, we can incorporate it into these models and essentially say that, all right, if you are this racial group, your sensitivity and specificity looks like this. If you are another racial group, your sensitivity and specificity is different. And you can adjust that based on the different racial groups and therefore arrive at more, first of all, estimates that are specific to racial groups, but then you can also put those together and just quantify some overall risk of HIV infection. So that is the work from Drexel. Now how I plan to incorporate some of this to here at Christiana is based on a study that Dr. Washio over there had just conducted, where she looked at data that we have. So we have postpartum data, and we also had some information about whether moms this was asked prenatally when they were receiving their care. Did you smoke during pregnancy? Are you smoking now? Have you smoked before while you were pregnant? And we have answers to that question. It's self-reported, of course. You could say no, you could say yes, or you can even just fail to disclose or decline to disclose the information. What we know, though, about these potentially stigmatizing behaviors is that you will have a lot of false negatives. You're probably not going to have any false positives. No one would admit to using tobacco if they didn't. And then you also have this other group down here, just people that aren't disclosing what they did. As expected, if you used tobacco during pregnancy, you had a 2-fold risk of preterm birth, of low birth weight. You had a 33% increase in the odds of having a baby that was sent to the NICU. When we looked at, though, comparing to not smoking, the did not disclose group, we see some, again, fairly strong associations here. And in fact, I think this makes sense, right? Because you would kind of think that if someone was not reporting, they would be a little bit more likely the positive responses versus the negative responses. What we want to then try to answer from this. So this is a study that's under review right now. And we want to then take the next step on this. So, are the moms who reported no tobacco biased in perfect sensitivity? Yeah, probably. Are the moms who reported tobacco biased in perfect specificity? Probably not. Again, there's no reason to report this if you didn't do it. What about the non-responders, though? Like, how can we deal with them? How can we either fit them to the yes category or the no category? So we can just we can impute their truth based on some characteristics of the mom. And we still have to figure out what those characteristics are. But with that knowledge, we can then try to predict did they use tobacco or did they not use tobacco. In order to do this, we need a few different things. So with the example I presented at Drexel, we had this survey done in Boston that we were able to get all this good data from for our sensitivity, our specificity, our true values. Fortunately, there's some literature that's already been published that looks at self-report of smoking during pregnancy and then uses either serum protein or urinalysis to then say how good is this self-reported tobacco use. So we have that. We have the sensitivity and specificity. We need to do a little bit more searching to answer number 2, but we have to have an idea of if we had the serum protein levels for this group of women, and we try to associate those with our outcomes of preterm birth, low birth weight, and NICU admission, we need some idea of that. So we're going to have to go to the literature to see if that's out there somewhere. If it's not out there, it's not the end of the world. We can just kind of base it on what we know about already and do a sensitivity analysis out varying that estimate. But it's helpful to see, has this been studied before? And that it uses methods that are already developed. These are these Bayesian methods I've been talking about. The last one on here, though, a method to account for the non-responders, is I think going to be some of the novelty to this work. Because we have this group here that did not disclose, and as I mentioned, they're probably more similar to the yes than to the no. Essentially what we want to do is just wipe these ones out. We're going to set them to being missing values, and we're going to try to impute back what their true exposure history was. With that information, then, we can correct for the misclassification, and we can arrive at a hopefully more informed estimate of what the risk of these outcomes are. Compare them to essentially what was the uncorrected or the misclassified analysis and see, did we actually demonstrate that is self-report a good enough way of ascertaining tobacco history? If it's not affecting the risk of these outcomes, then maybe it is good enough. Or if we see that it drastically alters the risk of these outcomes, then we know that self-report is of more limited utility. Where this work, though, is nice is, you may have some belief about this already, but we're actually able to quantify it. And that's where these methods are particularly valuable, because now we can assign this corrected odds ratio, and we can say that this is the confidence around it. So are there any comments or questions about the work that we're going to do at Christiana, the work I did at Drexel, misclassification in general?
If you go back to your table you just showed, so I had a question about these do not disclose. Like you said, they're probably similar to the yes group, but all the odds ratios are significantly higher than the yes group. So what theories do you have about why they, is there something else that's different about these women that don't disclose that increases their risk?
So I think part of this may just be smaller numbers in that, because I see that the precision is a lot lower in these groups here. It's a lot tighter up here. As far as other reasons, I would defer that question to Yukiko. Do you have any?
Maybe I just forgot to ask the question, so it has nothing to do with women's side. It's a provider's mistake.
But it does appear to be, it's a doubling, right, of the other odds ratios there.
They may also have other risk factors, because, as Marcy pointed out, these odds ratios are so much higher. So they don't disclose because they have smoking and something else.
Yeah, we looked at the demographic. There were those within the yes category or among those who did not disclose, and it looked almost identical to the overall cohort. So it didn't look like there's a certain group of women who decide not to disclose, and I think it's a mix of multiple.
But some of the risk factors could be also sensitive information that they didn't want to disclose, like drug use or
alcohol.
And that's a limitation of this approach right now, is that it can only deal with one misclassified variable at a time. So based on the fact that there's, in this type of study, there's multiple variables that will potentially be misclassified, the methods kind of fall apart a little bit. And that's an opportunity for, if there's any misclassification nerds out there other than me that want to develop these methods, this is an opportunity to do that. The challenge, though, will probably be how are there any covariates in the data set that describe the characteristics of these did not disclose women?
Not only the magnitude of the odds ratios are not large, but also if we look at the confidence interval, the confidence interval is too wide, so maybe we can consider the results are not so stable.
There are fewer women in those groups, right? So we have less precision there. Yeah. Did I see a hand in the back of the room?
Yeah, I'm just going to add one of the things that some of our data analysis, Tom Lowery and the Value Institute has worked on with approaching like missingness of data and
classification errors. A lot of times doing what you talked about where it just wasn't asked on a certain visit because the patient came in for an ankle sprain and no one got their smoking history, but when they come in with pulmonary infection, they didn't get it. But he had developed techniques that we can think about operationalizing, which is learning from previous data. So that same patient has 3 or 4 visits, and they might have different captures of comorbidities in there or some factor, where someone took the time with a psychiatric assessment to get a really good in-depth history of depression, whereas their fast-track stay for their laceration missed it, right?
Yeah.
And we don't learn, I think, as an EHR system from that right now, but I think there's opportunity to learn from that and to have this thing where once positive, we treat it as a positive. Like, and unless someone, really, I don't know, let's say they're an alcoholic, having that awareness, whether it's active or remission, I think is not as a challenge, but knowing that they were there puts them in a risk factor group that we know puts an alcoholic at higher risk for complications. So, but it's a challenge because the EHRs are treated as a gold standard, right? And we know they're not even brass, right? It's really bad. So, but we can learn from those old things, I think, and have a solution that puts them into a grouped knowledge that is now cumulative. And I think that's where we need to, improve that trajectory and the timeline of care of the same patient over 2, 3, 4 years. And as our time with these patients grows, we see that more, we connect the data more through the DIN. We're going to learn from that and actually all benefit from
And
it.
it might be very important contribution, especially in the field of addiction, because
Yeah.
there's no gold standard, like self-reported biochemical verification. Every single measure has some limitation to it. So,
Right.
and especially with pregnant populations,
Absolutely.
you have to be very careful not to blame
Right.
these women and get the child taken away before using
Right.
illicit substances. So if you have, we have more like a long way of looking at the different, aspects of the patient's record.
When I talk to our residents that are screening their patients for risk factors, I talk to them, when the patient will tell them they don't use IV drugs, and they haven't used them in 5 years, and they told me they used it last night. Because the way it's presented in the question may be one in which you're not in trouble for this, I need to help you better. And if they realize, wait, you're not going to report to the police, you just want to give me the right medicines, now all of a sudden they're being honest. And same thing with if they feel like that fear of losing their child and Child Protective coming and put them in, cuffs is gone, now all of a sudden they're more honest. I think that's where it's a challenge. But you might have one practitioner who gets that data and someone else who misses it over here. But if you could learn from the entire course.
I have a colleague at Drexel who's trying to do some repeated measures analyses from EMR data. And he's banging his head against the wall because he's seeing exactly what you described. So we were looking through the literature to see what other people have done out there. There's not much in this field right now. So doing longitudinal analyses from the EMR is a very timely, good topic to get involved in and perhaps direct the future of this, because exactly what you're saying is what he's dealing with right now.
Well, and when some of our research, team, we address data. And then I'll pay homage to Dr. Dries over here. When I say when you want a really good history, go find the ID the ID consultation, because they get the most amazing history. It's like the patient was born in sunny day in July, and it ends up with what's going on. And it's you can rely on that data. And so those are those things that we learn. Boots on the ground techniques to find these things, but operationalizing is very challenging. And so, but it's something that you said, it's a problem that's everywhere, and everyone's having the same problem. And until it's a agreed upon list of things that they have, we can follow them. We're stuck with this perfect source.
So just to paraphrase, what you're saying is for every prenatal visit, we should get an ID consult, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I want really good data.
That's why if you need a discharge summary, that's our procedure.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions, comments?
So what's the next steps, like when, for this project?
The next step for me is to figure out part 3 on here. And so one of my colleagues at Drexel helped me to develop these methods. He's on holiday right now, so I'm just waiting for him to get back, and then we'll sit down and try and figure out how to crunch these. I'm hoping to have something ready to share, or even publication ready by the end of the year with this. The methods are largely developed already. We just need to kind of figure out one additional equation in the model, and we just need to find some source of this prior information, which we have a good sense is already out Thank you for coming.
Thank you.